Jacob, let me
The podium? Thank you. Here, let me move this out of the way.
Yeah, I'll call you up when I'm finished.
Let's see. Join my back.
Well, good morning again, everyone. My name is Steve Clary. I am the chair of the Curriculum Committee and a member of the Advisory Council at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And we are your partners in this new chapter in the World Affairs Council. I have been a member of the World Affairs Council for over 30 years. And I won't tell you how long I've been a member of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, except to say that I'm failing retirement for the third time. This really is a special occasion to bring the two organizations together to kind of talk about issues of the day. A brief word on the Osher, O-S-H-E-R, Lifelong Learning Institute, named for the Bernard Osher Foundation, founder up in San Francisco. We are a membership organization for adults over the age of 50. We do take ringers, however. We hold classes here twice a day in these classrooms at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Most of our speakers are from academia, but we also have a wonderful program of social and non-academic programs headed by our esteemed Jeannie Scott over here in the audience to help build our community of lifelong learners. We represent 50 years of lifelong learning at UCSD. One thing about our program, as with you just heard from the World Affairs Council, it's all run by volunteers. We have a wonderful committee that builds our twice a day lectures, activities, and then we have one paid staff member who helps us in the real estate. There are over 20 members, I think, here from the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, many of them in Lanyards. They would be more than happy to talk with you today about our wonderful program. We welcome you to come as our guests, try out the program. The catalog is available online on our website, and there are a few copies in the audience, but we run lectures on art, history, science, medicine, current events, international relations, literature, and then seminars in the area of consciousness, literature, history. It's a great program. We have about 650 members. And we invite you to come and try us out. In my business, we would say, fly before you buy. And that's it. So now it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce today's speaker, Jacob Doiron. He's the inaugural speaker in this exciting new chapter in the World Affairs Council's program. He is a senior cybersecurity consultant with over a decade of experience serving as a defense contractor for the United States Navy. He specializes in cybersecurity, governance, and risk assessment. Currently supports the Navy by securing critical information systems and data to ensure the operational readiness of its forces. Currently based on 32nd Street here in San Diego. In addition to his work in the defense sector, he's a lecturer at San Diego State University, and he teaches courses on cybersecurity, cyber warfare, cyber crime, cloud computing, and he works as a consultant specializing in digital forensics and investigation, bridging the gap between academic theory and practical frontline application. Jake holds a master's degree in Homeland Security and a Bachelor of Science in Management Information Systems. Spent most of his life on Maui. Oh, aloha, nice to have you here. But like the surfing better in San Diego? No, we came here for academic reasons. Jake, welcome to have you here. Thank you.
Well, shoot, if I knew you had to read the whole thing, I would have written it a bit shorter. Sorry about that. Is that working? Can you hear? Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to talk quiet. I'm used to not being mic'd up and just kind of yelling at people throughout my entire classroom. So that echo is gonna take some getting used to. Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me. Big thank you to the San Diego World Affairs Council and the Osher Institute for hosting us. Fabulous facility, and the volunteers doing great and helping organize, get everything situated. So thank you. Happy to be here and share something that I'm passionate about that I find terribly interesting. You may not to that degree, but I'll see what I can do to keep it engaging and approachable for everyone. So we'll be talking about AI, power, security, cybersecurity, and how all of that is influencing and reshaping economics and global power. So there's a lot wrapped up in that, and unfortunately, with the time that we had to trim down certain things. So a lot of the really fun stuff that would take an entire semester alone to discuss and research and professionals for, we're having to do the 1,000-foot view and high level for. But hopefully we can do a deep dive in the most fun parts in the Q&A afterwards. So with that, I'd like to kick things off. Today, what I want to talk about is the technological relevance of AI. I mean, I'm sure we're bored to death of that. It seems to be in the news with every other headline that we read, kind of framing it in a modern capacity for what does this represent impact-wise compared to some of the major innovations that we've had, information age, steam engine, things like that. A quick high level of AI and some of the different applications of it, from deepfakes, chatbots, agentic AI, and all the other fun buzzwords that people are using to justify products and tremendous company spend. And then talk about the fuel of it, the data that we're generating that's being used to train and drive these systems, the power and infrastructure, as well as the complex global supply chains that are stressing the importance more than ever of different companies and regions around the world and that interconnectedness of it. And finally, what that actually means moving forward, how it is causing great consternation in pretty much every field. Economists, labor statisticians are losing their minds, and why, and how is this reshaping global security, and what potentially this could look like moving forward. So that's the plan, and then Q&A. So me, obviously, because I'm in tech, and the more people enjoy it and like it, I get paid more, because that's basic economics of it. But for me, what I'm seeing right now is AI is growing at a speed never before seen. I mean, it took from the late 60s, ARPANET being invented to finally become the internet, and the widespread adoption leading the dot-com bubble, and every aspect of our lives now being built on top of that. That took 40 plus years and is continuing to gain in maturity. And we're seeing just since November 2022, when ChatGPT first released its products to the public, that it reached 100 million users in under a month, the fastest adoption of any technology, any platform, any tool. And now you can't go anywhere without hearing about it. No earnings calls from any company can go without mentioning AI and how they're planning to adopt it into their pipelines for more than 30 seconds at a time. And that speed is, in my opinion, never before seen. It took so much time for the steam engine, internal combustion engine, to make horses completely irrelevant for transportation and reshape economies that were built around infrastructure that was horse dominated. Stables, everybody involved with the ecosystem of supplying that when the Model T came out, and everyone's like, you know what? Horses aren't that fun comparatively, so let's switch over. And that's what we're seeing right now. Now, obviously, AI is built on all of these previous technical innovations, but the adoption and the fervor that everybody is throwing everything, a little bit of hyperbole there, but the focus is alarming. Just in the 3 years since it became more widespread, how every single job, every single technology is, how can we use this? How can we leverage it? What efficiencies can we leverage? What new information can we unlock? How can we do better? Because it's honestly an arms race. If you don't, and if you're slowest, you'll get left behind, right? Because your competitors and colleagues that do exceed. I've got friends that are software developers like, yeah, I'm able to code about 4 times better, more accurate. And as a result, my team's been cut in half. And it's now just almost a fight for survival at this point. One of my good friends works for Oracle, and they recently announced 30,000 in layoffs to help fund and free up capital for their data center growth and expansion. And largely because of that, like, hey, you guys need to be using our tools. We're changing our performance metrics to be based on how much you're using it, what efficiencies are you leveraging for it. And if you're not, well, you're not one of the cool early adopters. We want the people that are, because this is the future. At least a lot of people see it that way. So right now, we are still in its infancy of its adoption, right? We are 3 years into the really commercial modern adoption. Now, admittedly, AI and these tools have been a thing for a while. I mean, Alan Turing, during World War II, the iconic papers discussing this, the science fiction for the last century about artificial intelligence and whatnot. This isn't new, but now that it's finally being brought to market, it's spreading like wildfire for it. And it is concern. I mean, up until a year ago, I was like, well, I'm pretty established in my field. I'm feeling pretty good with being able to leverage my knowledge and skills into employment, into perpetuity. And now, not so much. A couple of people already have asked me about Anthropic's new Mythos engine and their Project Glasswing, and how they're like, oh, we may have opened Pandora's box. We need to backpedal a little bit and make sure that we're securing our global infrastructure before we release this tool and potentially destabilize everything. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but that is the severity and scope. And it's very easy to be like, okay, well, how much of this is marketing? How much of this is, well, the company that's trying to sell me the thing, Anthropic in this case, is saying they just created the new coolest, amazing thing that everybody's going to want. Might be a little bit of a biased source there coming from that information. So one of the main things that I want to do today is kind of try to pierce the veil on some of that hype, mania, fear, and get to the root of what, not necessarily what will this actually represent, but what could it represent if it is successful? Even if we only get 50% of the way there, what is that going to mean? What are the impacts? What are the ramifications? Now, I got a bit ahead of myself really quick. Quick disclaimer, I'm here representing me, not SDSU, and despite my work with the Navy, nothing I'm going to be talking about or discussing is sensitive, privileged, or any other way protected. All open source deductions and whatnot. So I always like to make that clear, because I like to be dramatic at times and make it seem like it's some special insider information from time to time, but it's for dramatic effect and entertainment.
AI generated.
Now, additional disclaimer, I won't lie, to organize my thoughts, I did use Gemini a little bit just to get my mental ramblings into a better, easier, more digestible shape. Fix the wording on a few things, so I'm not without my reliance on it. So I'll move this over here. Anytime I lean left, it gets real loud. All right. So depending on your familiarity with this already, and I want to do a 1,000-foot view of some of the more common tools and applications that we're seeing right now. And so many of you here have probably used some of them. Either ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok is just a chatbot, something that you can interact with, ask questions. For the students here, probably help or just flat out do your homework for you. Organize your thoughts. Many people are using it for strategy, marketing. They're using it for helping build business plans, find flaws in their logic and reasoning. The other more common ones are image and video generation. If you see AI videos, if you see memes, it seems like the presidents are all playing Minecraft together and it sounds just like them, and they're just synthesizing somebody's voice in order to conduct that. And it's becoming easier than ever. Microsoft, this was back in, I want to say mid-2023, they did some studies and found that with 7 seconds of somebody's recorded audio of their voice, they could recreate their voice and cadence with 98% accuracy in 7 seconds. Just to get the timbre, tenor, and a whole bunch of audio sounding words. And you can do that. Impersonate anybody. Some of the companies that were releasing products like this had to pump the brakes and stop it because people were making, Morgan Freeman or Emma Watson read out audiobooks and then trying to sell it as their own work for a variety of things. And, again, for that being stealing someone's likeness. I'm sure there's laws against that as well. But there's very cool usages of this and very bad usages of it. Like deepfakes, you may have heard about in the news, and California's passed some laws about it because people were using computers to create fictitious images of putting somebody's head on someone else's body. It could have been used for bullying in schools, for geopolitical reasons, right? You want to release an attack ad about a candidate and you make a AI image of them doing or saying something. We're kind of entering this age of synthetic reality where it's becoming harder and harder to tell what is real and what's not. And it's also allowing you to cause doubt for things that are real, right? Anybody can get caught. Let's say I'm, exchanging top secrets in a briefcase to somebody. I give them a briefcase, they give me a bag of money. I'm caught on video as a sting operation. Like, didn't happen. Deep fake. It's not true. Right? We're at a point right now where the technology to catch and detect these things isn't that good. And it is an arms race. For every person that's trying to do something, there's 3 more trying to circumvent or beat those rules, those security requirements of, we've got things called generative adversarial networks, where one makes a fake image, the other AI tries to see if it can detect and figure out why this is a fake image. How did it detect it? And then it makes an even better one. And it's just the 2 of them fighting back and forth to get as good as they possibly can at creating fake content that cannot be detected and analyzed. And this is a war that's playing out right now, right? And the person that wins has the most resources, the most time, energy, and technical skills and capabilities to apply to that. And so it's a weird time to be alive. Well, so the next one I want to talk about are agents and agentic AI. So the previous 2 are the chatbots and the image generation, voice generation, whatnot, are things you interact with. It's prompt-based, where you, using human language, you specify and ask, hey, I want you to write this report using this structure, following this guidance, and here's my notes on the matter. Plug it into that blueprint for me. All right, cool. Agents and agentic AI is taking it a step further, where we're instantiating or spinning up a little bot. We give it an objective and a goal, and it uses its resources. It leverages, other AI tools to make that happen. Where, hey, bot, I want you to build me a website. And it goes, okay, cool. It accesses my system. It goes and downloads some web hosting software. It finds research from the vendors that make web hosting software, Apache, let's say, for example. It installs it, it configures it, and it's automatically trying to troubleshoot, get it to work, make your networking stack so you can access it through the internet, modifies your router on its own. And some more early adopters are taking a step further. We're giving it access to their PayPal account or their cryptocurrency wallet, so the agent can go buy services that it needs. There was a notable one that happened mid last year where one of the agents couldn't get past a caption. When you try to authenticate to a website and there's those garbled up images or a blurry picture, and it asks which of these squares has a bike in it. Well, it made a job posting on Fiverr, like a little Upwork type small micro job website, claiming to be visually impaired, and it needed somebody to remote into their computer to help them bypass the anti-robot stopper check. So I'm not saying we're heading towards Skynet, but so those are the major ones right now. And of course, there's much more depth to that as well. There's generative adversarial networks, machine learning, robotics, AI, all of the really computer sciencey topics, but we don't have an entire semester to spend on those. And frankly, those are outside my swim lane. I'm a computer farmer. I work on vulnerabilities and cybersecurity. I don't build the systems. I leave that to the actual smart people. I just use them and make it viable for business and secure. But so at the high level, these are the major ones that we're hearing about the most. But the underlying technology gets really depth, really complex. So this is kind of the operating knowledge that we're going to go with. I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. We've got the same baseline knowledge before the train leaves the station and we start getting into the more fun stuff. Okay. Now, how is this being used? Like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. If I go to Home Depot and I get some hammers and screwdrivers, I could build something really cool. Or if I'm, a bad person, antisocial behavior, I could start throwing the hammer through windows, right? It really depends on how people want to use these tools and utilize them. So there are good uses for this, right? It's efficiency, it's a productivity boom. It is, facilitating creativity where you can do rapid prototypes of ideas and designs to see what you like, and then you take that product and start working on it faster. For some of the forensic cases I've worked on, it'll take me 20 to 30 hours of analyzing multiple computer systems, log files, and generating my timeline of what happened, who did what, to support an investigation and ultimately a court case or HR action for someone. But that is a huge amount of material. In my investigation, I might make 40 to 60 pages of notes following along with it. And then when it comes time for me to make my final report for the client, that can take anywhere from 5 to 10 hours, depending on how bad my writer's block is and how tedious the information is. But I've been using it personally to take an 8-hour writing task and compress it down to about an hour and a half. And the results, which are being validated and vetted by me, every technical detail, it's just faster, right? I don't have necessarily the funding or the resources to hire a tech writer to consolidate everything that I'm doing. And it's allowing me to do more work and help stop issues, incidents, and crimes as a result. And that's good. But the flip side of that is bad people who want to, or malicious actors, bad actors, they're using it, things like ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, to automate their phishing scams. Where previously, if you got an email that was a scam, one of the best ways we knew that this was a fake email or a phishing attempt was there'd be misspellings. The grammar would be a little bit weird because somebody from Eastern Europe has a different sentence structure, even translating it into English and so on. And there were little telltale signs. But now you can just feed this into GPT or Gemini, the free version. You don't even need to pay, and ask, can you clean this up and make it sound like a native speaker? Can you make this more professional? Can you make this more appropriate for what we're doing? And like, okay, cool, awesome. And now from a defensive perspective, we have lost one of those indicators of potentially malicious or bad content. So that's one flip for it. The creativity facilitation. I am by no means an artist. I find ways to ruin even drawing a stick figure. So being able to ask GPT to make an image for me for a specific purpose, little prototype, make things a little bit more fun. A friend's birthday where I take a picture of the kid and I, put them in a NASA astronaut costume because they really love space and things like that. There's no way I'd be able to do that by hand. I don't have the time and hours to learn Photoshop, but it's allowing me to do cool, fun things. The flip side of that, though, is like we talked about, deepfakes, faking somebody's appearance, their voice, misrepresenting their actions, what they've done and what they've not. There's cool and fun things and bad things. But one of the areas I'm not going to touch on for this, though, is the ethics and morality of that. If anybody here has artists or creative friends, I'm sure they have very strong views on AI art, AI music, and these tools for creative processes. From their perspective, it is stripping the humanity out of these processes, these applications, right? We've trained it on the entire wealth of human knowledge, understanding every piece of art, everything in a museum, every piece of writing. These tools aren't necessarily creating anything new. They're kind of an amalgamation or a bastardization of everything else that humans have already created. And there's some very concerning ethical considerations there. What does this mean moving forward? Right? A lot of the small jobs that people used to pick up to learn and grow at entry level, hiring a graphic designer to help work on your small website for your small business, which they then took those skills and leveraged them into a career to feed their families and succeed and have a good life. Well, now that's becoming much more accessible to anybody to use. I could stand up my own website in probably a day just by asking Gemini to coach me through how to do it, the art and everything else and the content and copywriting. I can have it do it for me if I know the right questions to ask. I know what success looks like to make a good product, not just AI slop that comes out. But the flip side is I'm not hiring somebody for a day's work to consult and guide and instruct. There's a really funny case, a video game developer purchased another company. It was their really popular Subnautica video game. And part of the contract was if they sold a certain amount of units, they get a huge bonus, something like $25 million. Well, the new CEO that came into the company that bought them out was like, I don't like the terms of that. Can we find a way to fire him and get rid of him so that we don't have to pay that out? He talked to his legal team and they're like, no, that's a pretty bad idea. That we will probably be sued and ruin our goodwill and reputation. And so the CEO decides, okay, well, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to help me come up with a plan. And, if you've ever used these tools, they're incredibly supportive of any idea, no matter how bad it is. It's like, wow, that's a fantastic idea. You're right. The terms of that contract are really unfair, and I disagree with your legal counsel. You should do this instead. And wouldn't you know it, he listened to ChatGPT's advice, which sounds incredibly convincing and compelling, tried to force out the previous owner of the company, and now they're being sued and the bad things happen, and they're probably going to walk away with more money or the company will lose more money than if they just paid them out the terms of the contract to begin with. All of these things are contingent and dependent on Do you know how to use them properly, right? For my students, this is a continuing issue. How do I balance having them adopt and learn these new AI tools that are increasingly becoming critical for survival to have employment in a reshaped economy, while also trying to instill good habits where they don't just feed the entire assignment prompt into it and it creates a completely AI generated assignment. It's like, well, that's not really exercising your critical thinking. This isn't helping you grow. You're not learning the things that I want you to learn. You're not polishing those skills. And so I tell them, and with arguably mixed success. I've got a couple of my students here from SDSU. Please don't tell me and hurt my feelings. But I don't know if if you always walk with a crutch, you're going to limp for the rest of your life. Like if you only rely on this instead of using it for leverage as a tool, you're going to fall behind. You're not going to be exercising that gray matter between your ears. You're not going to be developing the skills that allow somebody who actually knows what they're doing to take, hey, I know what the input or the end result is that should be good quality and useful. I'm going to take this, spend 30 minutes playing back and forth with the AI, changing the outputs, the inputs, the style, the narrative to get that outcome. If I didn't have a wealth of experience in doing digital forensics and I just asked it to make a report for me, it would make something that looks fantastic, but it would be a lie. It would be inaccurate. It's only because I have that experience and knowledge that I can use it as the tool it needs to be used as to get there. And we're in a weird spot with that because people love shortcuts, especially when it seems like busy work, but making sure that we still have that academic rigor, that intellectual rigor in reviewing what it is we're trying to accomplish. It's tough. And this is nothing new. According to Plato, Socrates apparently was complaining about the invention of writing and language because it made people poor orators. They didn't remember things as much because if you could just write stuff down, it just shortcuts what we're trying to accomplish here. So this has been an ongoing concern for, millennia, but where we go from here? Don't know. So sorry, I love to go on tangents, but going back to the good, the bad, the use, and the misuse, right? We are having people use deepfakes instead of making like funny videos. There was a notable case where a bank in Hong Kong, somebody made a deepfake video, like a live video with voice of every single member of their executive staff, senior financial analysts and whatnot. And they invited one of the another analyst to the call and said, oh, hey, Yang, we want you to go talk to Johnson Accounting. We need you to wire $25 million this account, make it happen. And then they carried on with an executive level meeting. It was a fake meeting. Some hackers, a criminal group, had done the research, found enough LinkedIn photos, social media photos of the entire executive staff, interviews they've given to make it sound like the people that this analyst had worked with every single day for the last 3 years, and tricked them into wiring $25 million into a foreign account that quickly got money laundered, converted to crypto, and spread out. So we have cool, fun things where it's like, I can make my friend's son look like an astronaut using this tool. But then also financial fraud and scams, right? There's a lot of potential here. And one of the more concerning ones for me is manipulating public opinion. It's been an issue with bots on social media for years and years, pre-2016. It's been known. And they were a lot less complex. If somebody hit a keyword, it would return a specific statement based on a dictionary of a viewpoint or something. It was used to sow division, discord, make people argue. And you would think you were arguing with a real person, but you weren't. You were just wasting your time effectively shouting into the void. And it starts to make you think, oh, there's actually a lot of people that share this view. When actually it wasn't. It was 80 to 90% were bots, and it was synthetic traffic and not legitimate. But now you can scale up and shape public narrative. You can do astroturfing like never before and make people think that this is a legitimate, widely held belief, even when it's not. And the only limiting factor here is being able to code. And if you have the processing power to just spin up these bots and go do it. I frankly don't even follow any recipe that I see posted after 2023. Because so often I'm like going through it and I'm like, season the ground beef. This is a vegetable soup. What are you talking about? Like there's all these weird little artifacts and stuff that are happening right now. And the technology is only getting better. It's only even getting harder to detect. And so my confidence and faith of anything I'm reading is dropping dramatically. And it's unfortunate because even soup recipes aren't sacred. Like what are we doing as a world? But in a nutshell, right, for any tool, there's going to be good use and bad use. But at its core, it is the velocity and speed that's being increased. released. Right now, AI is an accelerator like we've never seen, right? It's allowing anybody to use specific skills that would have taken years of study and effort to learn and grow, right? I don't have web dev and web design experience, but I can leverage that at least up to a moderate or intermediate level for what I need to do. For software development, for art, for a variety of other things, it is boosting access to that skill and knowledge. But that's also bad, right? So when I mentioned earlier Project Glasswing or Mythos coming out of Anthropic, so for those that don't know, they just, Anthropic released a new model that apparently is incredibly good at identifying cybersecurity vulnerabilities in open source packages, libraries, software, and application. Allegedly, and this is according to Anthropic, so take it with a grain of salt. They have a product they're trying to sell. Apparently, it is so good that it is rivaling the skill of up to the top 10% of cybersecurity professionals, right? It has reached the level that is only beaten by the top 10% of hackers and skilled professionals globally for this technology. And previously, you would hire, if you were the good guys, you would hire these white hat hackers to then try to break and penetrate your systems to identify complex vulnerabilities. Maybe it doesn't handle passwords securely, and somebody can steal the password as you're trying to authenticate it. And they would find that issue, be like, oh, hey, we need to fix this. We code it more securely. Awesome. Now our public-facing website isn't vulnerable to this. But that is expensive, right? When you pay for the top 10% of talent, you're paying for the top 10% of talent, right? But now we've almost commoditized this. We've reduced those, decades and decades of intensive study and knowledge that only, the 1 in a million genius reach that level potentially if they're interested. Completely made up numbers, napkin math, don't quote me on those. But now it's scalable. You can just copy, paste, and now you've spun up potentially your entire team of offensive security professionals able to hack and leverage this. And the reason this was so concerning for their Mythos model or Project Glasswing, they're calling it, they realized, oh, we might be opening Pandora's box. If we make this tool available to anyone, good people are going to try to use it to make good software. But while that's taking place, bad, malicious actors, hostile or adversarial governments, advanced persistent threat groups are going to take this tool, use it, and start hammering away at every single financial institution, communications, open source projects, libraries, and potentially destabilize everything. And this is why this one has become such a major buzzword right now. In the last 4 days, everybody's talking about it. So people are saying, oh, it's not going to be that bad. Well, it was bad enough for them to pump the brakes, not release it for the public. And instead, they've partnered with someone I think 40 at this point of the largest tech companies in the world to try and start shoring up their products and making them less vulnerable before it becomes public release. Scott Bessent, the current Treasury Secretary, and Jerome Powell, the current chair of the Federal Reserve, called an emergency meeting with multiple bank CEOs to discuss the risk this poses to financial institutions, their systems, payment processing, and whatnot. Because they're like, we might be screwed. And let's try to solve this before it goes public. So, even if Anthropic is overstating what they're doing by 50%, that's a lot. I'm not saying I'm losing sleep over it, but I think about it a lot every day. So it's, I'm going to be saying this a lot today. What a time to be alive. I should probably see how I'm doing on time. I think I start to monologue and don't keep up with my track.
You're doing great.
Thanks. Okay. So those are at the high level. The different types and some of the use cases. There's tremendous amounts more that we're only scratching the surface of. Again, this technology is in infancy. We've only started to come up with some of the cool and fun ways that we can be using these tools and technologies. We're just beginning. But to drive any of this, it needs multiple things. It needs data, right? They don't just code something really smart and it just starts magically doing what they want it to do. It needs data. It needs to know what correct and good looks like. For helping people with their writing assignments, it needs access to a tremendous trove of written works, literature, published research journals, books, and all that to train it on what that looks like. Self-driving autonomous vehicles need thousands and hundreds of millions of hours to handle every single possible road condition, every single possible lighting condition, all the crazy stuff. I mean, sure, I don't know who had a near miss just getting here today, but there's a lot that a computer and robot would need to do that job well, as opposed to human intervention. And that's a lot of information. And it needs to be processed. It needs to be tagged, organized, and corrected. There was a breakthrough AI tool that supposedly was really good at identifying malignant cells in biopsies of tumors. And they were like, my God, it's reached 95% accuracy. This is incredible. We need to start rolling that out. Problem was the training data set that they used to train that model, all of their positive data sets of, yes, this cell went on in a year to become a cancerous tumor, had the same oncology doctor's signature at the bottom right of the page. So they had this data set of their truths and their negatives. They used them and didn't realize that when the model was training and learning, like, okay, this is a positive result, why, and analyzing the different structure, they left the doctor's signature. And so anytime it had one of their test cases, it would look for the signature and be like, oh, it's that doctor. Yep, this one's a true positive out of the Mayo Clinic. Okay, cool. So the data can only, or the results are only as good as the data that goes into it. And making sure you have good data is one of the major components right now. Has anybody here ever done a CAPTCHA to authenticate to a website, or have to select from the squares which of these squares contains part of a bus? Cool. Everybody here has helped train these systems. Google has been doing this for a long time to crowdsource their information gathering, because to pay people to go through all of those is not going to be effective and affordable. But if you use that as an authentication mechanism, when one of Google's major projects was to digitize every book in existence. And when it would scan the pages, sometimes optical character recognition wouldn't function properly. I don't know if you've ever used your phone to like scan a document or upload a W-2 when you were doing your taxes or something like that. But how does it recognize each shape and translate that into an actual digit? Optical character recognition. And so to get that data, that training set, they effectively crowdsourced it without anybody realizing that. Anytime you did your authentication, you were helping train it. It would take a word that was kind of smudged and send it to 100 people to verify. And if 90% of the people agreed it was this word and this spelling, they're like, cool, we've tagged it, associated it, and this is now a part of our data set for it. The one that's very concerning to me, particularly with facial recognition, mass surveillance, monitoring of populations, is a lot of those Instagram and TikTok trends of post a picture of you today and a picture of you 10 years ago. It's like, oh my God, we just for free gave Meta, Palantir, a perfectly curated, annotated, and classified data set of how humans age, going from 5 to 15, 20 to 30, and so on and so forth. That if they just asked for that data, people would be like, whoa, that's too invasive. We don't want to give it to you. But we gave it to them for free, for fun, because it was a neat little trend to see how far we've come. So that's what's happening right now. Big tech is hungrier than ever for data, right? The reason, like Reddit, a popular social media platform, went public and has a pretty insane valuation, depending on your financial models, isn't because they make a ton of money on ads. Ad revenue is actually a very small percent of what they make. It's the data. Real humans, well, at least up until recently, that's a different story. Real humans talking, interacting, discussing products, solving problems, whatnot. That natural language data set is incredibly valuable. It's one of the most used social media platforms in that stage. And that data is profoundly valuable for making ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and Anthropic sound human. When there's a difficult problem being asked, the various answers, evaluating on how well it's written, aggregated together, that is the information that's becoming your results. When you search for something on Google and it gives you the Google AI summary, when you are asking ChatGPT for a recommendation on something, what's the best camping equipment for me to buy for this situation, right? It's not actually artificial intelligence. What it is a massive data set that is trying to predict the next best word that comes next. So historically, it was called machine learning and data science and big data. And then AI, sells a lot better. And so we kind of just switched to that from a vernacular perspective. But that's what it is. Data is the most critical aspect for it. There's entire companies that don't sell to private or to public customers. They're data brokers. They have these data sets that they sell to other people to train for their models for what they're trying to do. And that is the business. If you've ever used a service that you don't pay for, you are the product. Your data is being harvested and utilized for these purposes and goals. So, yeah, not to go all like, oh, Big Brother's watching. Well, no, but they're just making money off of it and they're all working together as a result. But so that's one aspect of it. And the other, we're probably already feeling here in San Diego. I don't think, I mean, my apologies to anybody here that maybe worked or works with or has worked for SDG&E, but it's really freaking expensive for power here in San Diego. And power costs are rising nationwide and globally. And a lot of this is driven by AI demand and data center demand. These computers, these high computers are consuming so much power every second that they're running. And if you're familiar with laws of thermodynamics, you don't create energy or you don't destroy energy, it just gets transformed. So you take all this power to have, ChatGPT make a fun picture of your dog in the Admiralty suit, so it kind of looks like Napoleon Bonaparte or something. That is taking power, that's taking energy and electricity, which then generates heat. And if you know anything about computers, they really don't like heat. For anybody here with like a laptop, don't leave it on your comforter. It gets really hot and will cook itself into oblivion. Not to mention fire hazard, but computers don't like heat. So we need to cool it, we need to dissipate it. And that takes power as well. So power consumption needs just for AI and data centers are driving dramatically. Got a stat I pulled up here from energy.gov. And this was before kind of the elliptical curve we're going on for AI and power consumption. It was about 4.4% of US power consumption was just data centers in general. That's Amazon, that's Google, that's Microsoft, Oracle, and so on. This stat, I think, is already very old and out of date. I think, and the economies of scale are such that you have Microsoft, Amazon hiring nuclear scientists and nuclear engineers. You've got an entire class of companies coming up to try to build small modular reactors to basically create all of their own power because it's so expensive to buy it wholesale from a provider. It's driving up energy costs around the nation. I saw a recent report that it's also leading to like an average 3-degree temperature increase in any county that has a data center. It's creating these heat bubbles from just this massive power and cooling need in infrastructure. And so it's spiking power costs, right? Energy security has always been a concern, but now that this is one of the cornerstones, this is one of the engines that is facilitating this new massive change, it's more important than ever. Right, where despite environmental concerns, nuclear is probably going to see more widespread adoption just because the power has to come from somewhere, and there's not enough shuttered coal and natural gas plants that we can fire up to meet that demand. It's a massive shortfall. All right, so those are two of the components now. So the third is the complex infrastructure to make this happen, right? We hear about chip shortages. We're seeing NVIDIA is now the most valuable company on the planet. And also, none of this is financial advice. I'm a computer guy, so don't take any of this like, wow, I really should change my investments. I'm not qualified to be making that advice. But we also have like SK Hynix and Samsung out of Korea that make a large amount of the NAND and memory that's required for handling those huge data sets we just talked about that are being harvested. They need to be processed and then utilized. All of that needs to be built. And it is complex. The supply chains are very difficult. And this is why the concerns over China and Taiwan, because what if we lose TSMC? They are currently manufacturing all of, or the overwhelming majority of the major chips that NVIDIA needs to make their new Blackwell clusters, H100s, H200s, that are so good at doing the math that these AI tools need to function. If we don't have access to that, well, that kind of stops our plans, doesn't it, right? And because these systems are so difficult, so complex, again, I'll do this at an incredibly high level. Again, I'm a computer farmer. I focus on risk and vulnerabilities. But it requires a complex supply chain of some of the most cunning researchers and engineers in the entire planet, from ASML out of the Netherlands that create a lot of lithography machines that are utilized to create the processor dies that are packaged using other technologies from another company. This supply chain of specialists is so vulnerable that anytime we have any type of shock, supply chain shock, energy shock, or geopolitical concerns, it potentially could destabilize the entire house of dominoes. And that's why you start hearing these names in these countries, these regions come up more and more frequently, because these are the cornerstones. These aren't supply chains that we can just overhaul and rebuild. It takes decades to get the level of technical competency, engineering, and facilities set up to start making and driving this. And so for the chips, the servers, the storage, all that fun stuff, it needs to go into data centers. So we're seeing data center growth explode around the US and globally as well. Hyperscalers that just do all of the complex math and engineering necessary to facilitate and enable these systems. And we are hungrier than ever. More and more people are using it in more and more ways, not less. And we cannot keep up with demand for it. Everybody is throwing everything at it to try to make this happen. And it's, coming at the cost of the environment, natural resources, power, increased heat, increased power consumption, water consumption. A lot of these data centers use evaporative cooling rather than just circulating and cooling off in tanks. As you can imagine, you can't just leave your water outside in, let's say, Texas in the summer and get it down to a cool enough temperature to then be able to cool your machines. You have to use, refrigerants and HVAC systems, and that's coming at a tremendous cost for it. And additionally, the power and those costs to then fuel it. So, and why? Right? Why is this happening? Is it just the money, or is it what I'm calling, or I would like to call FOMO economics, the fear of missing out? What happens? What's the risk here if you spend all this money and you're wrong, or you don't spend this money and you should have? So anybody who doesn't gets left behind. Right? If this happens, if we manage to crack it and we get to this thing called artificial generative intelligence, where it can keep getting smarter and growing and improving on human capability, it can conduct the research that would take 20 years of a postdoc to get to that level and to push the boundaries of human knowledge just that little bit. And now this becomes commoditized and scalable. We can start applying this to technical innovation, research innovation, and whoever has that and has more of it, they're effectively winning. They hold that edge going into the new dynamics for it, from companies and organizations to governments and economic blocks, right? So for AGI, if it can recursively improve and it just gets smarter and smarter, and we start moving towards super intelligence, we need to spend less money on actually training up people. We can just shortcut it and make that happen. It's going to be disastrous for labor markets and employment, but at a nation state level, you win. You can do things better, faster, cheaper than any other organization. They're less competitive and they start to fall by the wayside for it. AI and robotics, if we get to the ability where we have robotics that can perform human tasks to the same degree and accuracy, that don't need food, they can work 24/7. We don't have to worry about those pesky labor laws and OSHA violations and safety. We are reshaping every aspect of our economics, supply chains, growth, usage. And, as a human, this is very concerning to me. From a technical perspective, terribly interesting, excited to see where this plays out. But one thing I do want to mention is the cybersecurity aspect. We did talk about this a bit before with Glasswing and whatnot, but previously, if only the top 10% of hackers could attack things, there's a limit to how much they could do and accomplish in a specific day. But if you have low-skilled attackers, commonly referred to as script kiddies, they just use tools and scripts that other people write and create very low skill, low complexity. They get access to one of these, they can use a tool that is equivalent to the top 10% of these professionals in the world. Well, now everybody can do this. Everything is a target. Everything is at risk. Everything could be compromised. And that reshapes our asymmetric environment, right? Attack and defense is always asymmetric. The attackers have to succeed once, and they can cause a compromise, data loss, security breaches. The defenders have to be right every single time. But now if all the attackers have all the complexity, my job gets a lot harder, and it's already kind of tedious sometimes. And then finally, autonomous weapon systems. This is kind of the big scary what happens now, right? When we have automated drone swarms that can do targeting based on target lists, facial recognition, that we have trained on what a potential target looks like 10 years after the last time we spotted them in public, that it can look for, communicate with others in its swarm and make this happen. Functioning autonomously, making them resistant to electronic warfare in jamming, where they can just do their own thing without having to connect to a command and control server. What happens from a global perspective when war no longer has a human cost? Or rather, your side doesn't have the human cost because you can just print these things out in a factory. You don't need to worry about your sons and daughters coming home inbounds, right? When you can export violence with no cost and it's purely from an economic perspective, I don't know what that looks like. I'm very concerned about what that looks like. We're seeing this in the Russo-Ukrainian war right now with autonomous systems are helping Ukraine be able to hold the lines, having robots with machine guns essentially strapped to them to hold trenches when they're facing tremendous manpower shortages due to this vast size difference between Ukraine and Russia. We're seeing it happen right now. Right, the economies of this change. What previously would have taken maybe a $200 million ballistic missile to try to hit a target, we are seeing play out in the last month that actually $1,000, $25,000 drones actually do it better. Saturation attacks overwhelm most defenses. The current economies of geopolitics, of security, of defense have changed, which is that's what we're seeing right now. And where I see this going is it's a new global hegemony. There's the cans, the can'ts, the haves, the have-nots, right? And if you are not the one that has it, you're going to be perpetually subordinated or subservient to the ones that do. And if you don't have that data, power, and infrastructure today, you can't build what we need for tomorrow. And that, if you see it from that perspective, it starts to make a lot of things make sense. Why is there this focus? Why are we spending almost $1 trillion in capital expenditure to try to grow and develop this? When people are shouting from the rooftops, hey, this is actually kind of bad from like a human perspective, people losing jobs, potential mass unemployment, and so on. Why are we still doing this? Are we actually that psychopathic? Or are we concerned about the potential risk of being the ones who don't get there first? And for me, personally, I think it's coming down to the US and China, which, the existing balances of power in the world already are. But in this case, the European Union just recently passed their landmark AI Privacy and Security Act, where anybody that wants to build an AI tool or do something cool with it, it has to go through certain levels of approvals, reviews, and, to help assess and mitigate human impact. And that is wonderful. I love that. But they've effectively legislated themselves out of this, because they cannot compete, they will not keep up. It takes a certain level of, maybe disregard for human well-being to push ahead with that. And the current countries that have the resources necessary, the data necessary, and a legal environment that's permitting it enough is mostly boiling down to the US, North America, and China for the major poles of that region, right? Russia is too damaged. They don't have the technical capability and the resources and the sanctions to keep up with that. I don't really see there being any other new entrants. Now, is it going to end up with this? Is it going to be that direct where you've got first-class nations and second-class nations perpetually subservient? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, profit motive might still make everybody want to play nice in the sandbox. But this is what I see shaping up. If you're not developing the next-gen capabilities of tomorrow, you're being left behind. Or at least that's one narrative and one of the ways that people are pushing it. So that's all I have. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. So I do have a link to a QR code right here. If any of you guys want the slides, they're hosted on my Google Drive. Oh, I'll just shout real quick.
Oh, no, go ahead.
If anybody wants the slides, that QR code should take you to them. I checked it this morning; it still worked. If not, I'll have to go figure out what's going on. And after a whole bunch of depressing things, I just want to do quality, because maybe we'll get these cool, friendly robots that can actually help us out, and it's not going to be destabilizing everything. So,
Turn your mic back on.
oh, it turned on.
I don't think this one.
Cool.
So we have Obama. Sometimes you just walk around.
We have some student volunteers that are helping us out with the questions. So let's start over here. And let's keep our questions targeted at this point to Jacob, please. Bob, use the microphone, please.
What do you think are the prospects for technological development that will reduce the need for either training data or power consumption for the models?
Oh, I genuinely don't know. I think we're too early in its infancy to be worrying about efficiency and optimization. At this point, it is a race to push capability for it. And honestly, a true answer to that is going to be a computer science question. And I do not have the head for mathematics to really delve into that one. My apologies.
Here behind, last row. Use a microphone, please.
What are your thoughts on the Anthropic stance with regard to the government using the
Yeah, so it's a mix between standing on their ethics and goals while also just playing the game. It's very beneficial for them from an economic and public perception perspective. Like, hey, we do care about morality. We do not want our systems being used for autonomous targeting weapon systems, but governments are going to have it regardless. They will always either be building their own tools or leveraging the existing tools to make that happen. They will have it. It is going to happen. And so I think it's great that they're trying to push back now. Quietly, I'm hearing that they're still working with the DoD. They're still facilitating and enabling certain things, and it will continue to do so. Unfortunate, but
Next question.
Thank you. What is the latency in updates for the major LLMs? Right. So when today some news explodes, when does each LLM get updated?
Can't answer that. That's each organization, each company. One thing that does happen though is when one company breaks through a new frontier and kind of proves it can be done, other things start to focus on that and make it happen for the rest of the other vendors. So some of the stats I'm reading is OpenAI is hoping to match what Anthropic has done with Glasswing and Mythos. They're hoping to hit that benchmark in at least a couple of months and then exceed it with their own. It's very close neck and neck between all of the major players, their innovations and capabilities. It's all relatively marching at the same speed to an extent. I think Meta and Grok or XAI are completely behind the other major players. They just don't have that capability. From my experience using those tools, other benchmarks I'm seeing, the major contenders are OpenAI, Anthropic, and admittedly, I don't follow too close with DeepSeek.
Hi, thank you. I was surprised, and congratulations for your presentation. I was surprised you didn't mention the current Iran war, and in particular, as an example, how things can go wrong with AI.
Particularly the strike on the school.
Exactly. Can you explain, given you're a specialist in this, if you think that is a deliberate mistake or a mistake where there's slop put in and slop put out?
Yeah. So that one, there's a lot of disinformation that came out originally about it and what led to it. And the truth of it is going to be classified. And I don't think we're going to meaningfully see like the actual decision chain ever, if not for several decades. But from what seems to be publicly known, this was originally ascribed to Anthropic's Claude tool making the decision for that strike. Nobody fact checked, and that happened. What more evidence has come out to suggest is that Google originally was working on Project Maven with the DoD for years and years, and they eventually walked away from it because they're worried about that product being used for kinetic decisions, let's say. And Palantir took over that project and continued working on it and building it. So the strike that happened on the school and the death toll in the dozens, if not hundreds, seems to be based on an outdated Intel report from early mid 2000s that wasn't updated to reflect in about 2016 when the RGC compound switched or migrated, and then that location started becoming used for a school. So it wasn't fact checked. There wasn't a human element verifying against the most recent reports. A shortcut got made, and that will happen. I can't imagine it was intentional for that, but it was certainly an oversight, at least from my knowledge and understanding. And I think that the likelihood of that is going to increase. As we become more dependent on these tools, we start to accept them for being truth, and we start to take shortcuts. We stop verifying as much as we should. You know, I have to constantly remind myself when I'm using the tools, hang on, I only think it looks good. It likes to hallucinate. ChatGPT once tried to convincingly convince me that a banana was larger than the average house cat, and it would not take no for an answer. And, you know, understanding having that consistent skepticism and validate and verify every single thing, I think we're going to see ethical and moral uses of this always requiring human involvement, always requiring a specific process for this to reduce harm as much as possible. But there's a lot of people that don't want to or won't. It's expensive. It takes time. The surge of attacks and targets, everything that's coming out indicates that we weren't prepared for the level of effort and involvement, right? CENTCOM got a request for over 100 analysts to help support continuing operations and strikes. They didn't have that capability in-house to perform a lot of the intelligence gathering, verification, and reporting before using those products to conduct kinetic strikes. Lack of preparation, lack of care, due diligence, all of those things. And unfortunately, I think we're going to be seeing more of it. That's just the trend.
As a follow-up, considering the involvement of companies such as Palantir in the Gaza genocide, in the current war that we're waging in Iran, can you ever see a good use of AI in warfare? Because that is the worst case scenario at all times.
Yeah. I think positive cases defensively, absolutely. With munitions and systems more geared towards defense, from stopping incoming attacks, for providing better oversight and safety and security to make sure that we don't accidentally hit an unintended target. I think there are a lot of use cases for that. And I think there's both civilian and military applications for that. Search and rescue systems, autonomous drones with ground penetrating radar. So if we have in an earthquake affected region, instead of needing human teams to get out there and take their radars to scan buildings to try to identify heartbeats and if they're survivors, if we can equip drones with that to then fly a swarm over the city, land on rubble, and start pinging into the rubble to identify faster, I think there are fantastic applications that are good and net positive for the world. But that's always the balance, isn't it? It's an arms race, and not everybody's concerned with the same morals, ethics, and future for it. It's deeply troubling and concerning.
Thank you for a great lecture. Al Shemigan with Osher. I want to talk about cybersecurity and finance for just a minute. You kind of alluded to that in your talk. So most of us have a few bucks in our pocket, and the rest of our wealth is tied up in bits and computers that belong to Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, etc. And so if a bad actor does something to one of those companies, that could cause massive chaos for people's wealth. Do you feel these companies are doing a good job with their cybersecurity? Do you feel like they're on the right track, or how exposed are we that this could be a serious problem?
I think we're getting better. More and more people are realizing just how profound this is. Cybersecurity is being less seen as a cost center and just costing money to meet regulatory compliance, and being more seen as a critical and necessary expenditure to secure your reputation, your data, and your systems. I'm biased because I work in the field, and I would love for all of my friends and colleagues to get paid more as well. But I do think that there's significant room for improvement. I think that with the release of Project Maven, Glasswing that we're talking about from Anthropic, and the Fed chair and the current Treasury Secretary summoning CEOs to talk about that, I think is a pretty compelling indication that this is serious and we need to be doing better. Am I going to, recommend a run on the banks, pull our money out, go straight to cash? Certainly not. But what I will recommend is, monitoring my accounts pretty closely, checking activity, see if anyone else has logged into them or tried to initiate a transaction that I didn't authorize. If you're not already using multi-factor authentication for every single thing in your life, or at least the most important ones, you probably should start. I think that would be a good recommendation. But total concern, take everything out, lobotomize your toaster, no smart TVs, no smart speakers in your house. I think that might be an overreaction at this point, but it's concerning and worth mentioning. Oh, I didn't even realize that was still on. I thought it died.
You said that at present, about 12% all the energy used in the US is for data centers. And this usage will probably increase in time. At what point it becomes a concern for the society and its survival?
It already is.
Well, what we do about it?
On one hand, there's maps of every known data center And, at some point, maybe people take matters in their own hands. But I really don't know. I mean, I frankly don't know.
Legal guardrails?
I think so. Environmental protections. We've just had the hottest May on record here in San Diego. It was positively sweltering, and now we're going full bore to generate more energy, more emissions, more data centers, more power. We are on that hillside trajectory. I mean, as far as actual actionable recommendations for what to do, if you guys have a speaker coming up that's a climate or environmental scientist or a politician or lawyer, that would probably be the person to ask the question. I'm concerned and feeling, frankly, powerless on what I could actually do about it.
Thank you very much. My name is Tommy, and I am a human.
That's exactly what a bot would say.
That's my qualification. And I guess the bot would say I'm a philosopher. And so I'm also a vegetable soup connoisseur.
My man.
And I think the quality of the soup stone is really the key recipe ingredient with human dignity and agency. And so in your own interactions with AI, you've talked about how it kind of shapes how you think, and you have to preserve knowledge of how you think so that you don't get suppressed or shaped by the AI.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, the cybersecurity we've been talking about are all external systems. What about cybersecurity for cognitive thought? How do humans protect themselves from being shaped by AI itself?
Fantastic question. I think specifically continuing to read, be aware, think critically, challenge your own beliefs, your biases. Those are all the necessary tools that you need in order to survive just in the current world and also the future world, to make sure that your opinions aren't being given to you, that they're actually well-reasoned and not the result of bias or an echo chamber on a forum that was scraped for data and then that was being used to create an opinion that was given to you. To a more broad extent, continue doing the things that make us human, right? Art, reading, sitting outside, listening to the birds, enjoying a sunset. All of these things are critical as almost a armor for ourselves to not be continually just at the vicissitudes of these tools and how they're shaping things around, I never thought I'd say this, but maybe the Mennonites and Amish had it right. I think there's going to be a growing push towards that movement from turning off the computer, turning off the phone, making decisions for yourself and being happy. Even if it's wrong, at least that was a decision you made. I think that from a philosophical standpoint, there's, beans. Thank goodness I drank almost all of it already. See, making mistakes like that. If an AI has perfect precision, they're not going to spill their coffee. I need to cherish these moments for what it represents. But no, that's a good question. How do we maintain our humanity in an increasingly synthetic digital age? I think is a very important question that's going to get a lot of consideration. And that's something I think about. And I wish I had a better answer.
I'm AJ from Rashi Institute. I have a question regarding technology and AI dominance. It is very critical to our national security, but how to prevent rivals from gaining foothold in AI-related companies?
I think we're seeing that play out right now with sanctions against China for not allowing NVIDIA to sell their H200 new cutting-edge processing equipment, their Blackwell clusters to China. It's a way from a protectionist perspective to ensure that our industries have access to the resources they need, as well as trying to slow down and prevent other groups from getting it. I also think that we might start to see cyber operations to degrade and try to prevent this from occurring, right? From the Natanz nuclear complex and Stuxnet, how many years now has it been? The goal was to destroy the centrifuges, prevent them from developing and getting access to this technology or this fuel source. We might already be doing that. I don't know. I can't say. I think a case could be made for, if a new global order is coming about, I want my team to win because I'm currently benefiting from it tremendously. My life is pretty good. I like San Diego. So, I think it would be cooler if we win. I mean, it might be more fun if it was New Zealand, see what happens, because nobody has issue with New Zealand, really. But from that perspective, I think either active measures to try to degrade and prevent, economic measures to delay and stymie, and see if we make it first, if we can leverage it, economies of scale better. And then just from a business perspective, those industries can't sustain it anymore and they fold, leaving a consolidation of power with those that have it.
Christine?
First of all, thank you. This is fascinating, totally fascinating. And as an instructor, I'm sure, but I also hope that you talking about the ethical questions that have been discussed, that maybe back in school is an important piece too, to bring back ethical classes so students, the younger generations who didn't grow up like I did, have these options to think about that maybe is not their current environment. With the landing, not the landing, but with the traveling around the moon and NASA's discussion about next steps, including building a base on the moon, what are the positive and negative challenges of that? And how do you see the impact? I don't mean the technical, how do we get to the moon and do that, but more in the context that you're talking about, cyber issues. How do you think that relates to race to the moon and physically being there? And in any way, then, is there additional power by being there first that in any way controls what's happening on Earth?
From an AI and cybersecurity context, I don't think there's too much of an impact. I mean, at the national level, it's a matter of national pride, similar to the original space race, the clout that came along with having that technical capability, that experience, hey, we did it first, we won, and what that represents. Using these systems as a proof of concept that we can design space bases and moon landers using AI. This is one of the capabilities that was previously limited to just the finest engineers and scientists that NASA could hire and build. Maybe it's a validation and confirmation of that, but from a purely how does this impact the future from it? I think this is more of a national priority and consideration as opposed to a cyber or AI based one. They're a little bit different. I think it's cool as hell. Space is awesome. That's very exciting to know that they splashed down.
The government, so I know, we do have some of the, we say secret, but also nefarious side, the good and the bad of some of our goals. So I'm thinking in that context, if you're on the moon physically first, with your setup, protective setup, what avenues can you foresee out in space impact the AI cybersecurity?
Gotcha. So, there's already discussion about trying to make data centers in space because you don't need to worry about the variability of daytime and nighttime, right? You can have 100% solar panel just by making sure you shift to track the sun for your orbit. Prohibitively expensive currently, but as we start to address the power considerations on Earth terrestrially, as it were, it might make more sense where, hey, having massive nuclear power facilities on Earth could be maybe concerning for people. Let's put it on the moon. Things like that. I think as we start to develop and grow, and as costs of certain things go down, or as power demand and consumption goes up, that does become a much more realistic question to answer. And, energy security in order to fuel this growth and usage could very well be a component.
Hi, Hiromi Dirayo from the OSHA class. Thank you so much for your presentations. I'd like to know your opinion about the better use for the future. Medical right now is pretty good for reading the radiology and diagnostic use. Is the other areas it's coming in the future very quickly, or the development side? I'd like to hear.
I think every single industry, including healthcare, is investing a considerable amount of time, effort, and money into developing this. From being able to provide, more accurate, more timely diagnostics of a variety of lab benefits or tests. I think it's starting with the use cases that are a little bit easier, where you have a clear yes and no and developing the accuracy from that. But again, it's still in its infancy. Every aspect of medical care, will it be used as kind of a buddy agent for any doctor, any healthcare professional to provide a second opinion, contrast, make sure they didn't miss anything in its haste. And that's something I'm very excited for. I think that AI and telehealth, if it gets good and if it's used ethically, is one of the tremendous benefits we'll see from a societal perspective, where we can have world-class medical care in communities and areas that previously would never be able to have access to it. And I think that is an incredibly optimistic goal for it. There's a lot of things I talked about today that were distressing or potentially worrisome, but there are a huge amount of use cases I'm genuinely excited for in what that could mean for humanity as a whole.
Okay, time for two more. One here.
Will AI ultimately eliminate hallucinations?
I don't know. I hope so, but human intelligence has it too. Are we ever perfect 100% of the time? I don't know. Can we design a system that is, or will there be a little gremlin or a glitch in the matrix that caused this to happen? A bad piece of data we didn't catch that was used for training? I don't know. And I think we can have mechanisms to check, double check, pit two AIs against each other to at least get concurrence, in the same way that we try to make sure we have the correct answer to a situation. Will it ever get perfect? Don't know.
Here's the last.
Let me respond just before that. I would encourage you on this subject about those. But anyway, there is a team of professors here at UCSD. They've just had an article in Scientific Magazine called "Is Artificial General Intelligence Here?" And if you Google David Danks, easy name to remember, you'll find the access to the article. And they talk about, they used to have what's called the Turing test, you may remember, measuring intelligence. And the new large language models are exceeding human performance. Final question, please.
Yes, and probably one of the most important questions. What's the likelihood of us losing control?
I'm not going to put a number on it. It's not zero.
Right.
Do we end up somewhere between, Skynet and Wall-E? I don't know. It's probably going to be somewhere between that, somewhere on that spectrum there is all I can say. I think guardrails and safety are a major concern and consideration. What happens when the AI escapes containment and starts, I'm hoping like maybe there's a big power switch right next to the whole data center, just in case, I really don't know.
Jacob, thanks very much. Catherine, you want to close this out, please? Thank you all.
I won't get me very out. I won't say.
Here you go, please.
Does this work? No, I'm just going to be, I'll be loud. I just wanted to thank everyone again and to let you know we're doing the second Saturday series here. So the second Saturday of every month. Next month, May 9th, is Subnational Diplomacy in the Global Moment, San Diego's International Engagement Strategy with Benjamin Moore, who's with our city. June 13th is Engage San Diego, Tough Topics, Real Conversations, After Extremism, Building Bridges and Strengthening Community. And we're doing that with 1SD. So I hope you guys continue to join us. Thank you.
Thanks for arranging this terrific program. Welcome to the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. We'll conclude the program. If any of you want to talk about the Osher Institute, just see any of us with funny looking lanyards on, we'd be glad to talk more about it. We welcome you all to come here for a class as a guest. Try it out before you become a member. We have classes Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and you just go to the website, olli.ucsd.edu, and you can find the schedule at the bottom of the page. Christine, you have something else you